Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Fin Addicts Network podcast. Jason Sarney here. I'm joined with my buddies Brian Byrne and Drew Welsh, and it's obviously been a really busy and hectic day in Dolphin world. Before we get into it, just wanted to bring in the Fin Addicts. Brian, how you doing?
Really good. In the middle of a crazy fantasy football weekend from drafting feels like every 6 hours. But we'll see if we can survive, and we finally have a Miami Dolphins 53-man roster, which I'm really excited about.
I'm excited as well. I know you're well within the fantasy season. And Drew, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing great. Actually prepping for a fantasy draft myself around 8 tonight, and just glad to see football on the screen. Went to a high school football game on Friday, watched some college football on Saturday. Football is back, and I'm looking forward to next weekend.
That is awesome. So let's get on into it, everybody. You know, the Dolphins, obviously, before naming their 53-man roster, brought in another man that we did not even draft or have on that team prior to training camp. That's rookie Lynn Bowden Jr. out of Kentucky, who was the Las Vegas Raiders' third-round draft pick. And the particulars of the deal, Dolphins sent that the fourth-round pick of 2021 that they acquired from the Raekwon McMillan trade, and they basically flipped it for Bowden and a Raiders 2021 sixth-round pick. So, University of Kentucky Wildcat, ironically, played wide receiver, running back, quarterback, returned punts, returned kicks, 4.38 40. Everyone is obviously very excited about this player, this potential that he's going to bring in. He is listed as a wide receiver if you look at what the Dolphins did on their team's social account. So let's get a little reaction from you first. Drew, what are your thoughts about the trade?
Before we jump into it, Jason, let's take a quick look at what this guy is capable of. I'm going to play a quick minute-and-a-half video, and let's check it out.
Oh, yes, let's do that.
Across the 50, coming near sideline, needs one block. He's across the 30, cuts back right at the 20, breaks a tackle, breaks another one. He's at the 10, he's at the 5, touchdown, Kentucky! How incredible was that run? He follows his tight end, and he'll go in standing up. Lynn Bowden goes over 1,000 yards with a 6-yard touchdown run for 6 points. 18 seconds, 17 seconds, both scrambling right. Flips it for the end zone. It's deflected and caught. 20, 15, 10, 5, dives in, touchdown, Kentucky! Bowden retreats, splits coming, he steps up, he's gonna run, he's gonna make it, he's across the 50, down the far sideline, 40, across the 30, 25, cuts right at the 20, 15, 10, breaks another tackle, touchdown, Kentucky! Lynn Bowden, 61 yards for 6! How good is this guy?
And we're back.
Woo! That guy can move. So first thing that I want to just say before I get your reaction, this guy was a Paul Hornung Award winner, as you saw on that screen. If anyone doesn't know who has been a part of that fraternity, it's a 10-person group. Odell Beckham Jr., Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, part of that crew. And now the newest Dolphin. So, Drew, I mean, man, what a player. What an addition to add with this speed to an already very speedy Dolphin offense.
Absolutely. I think one of the things you have to look at if you're examining the trade is the original fifth that was traded as far as the McMillan trade. So essentially they traded McMillan and a fifth and got him for the sixth at the end of the day. I think you noticed one big thing in that video, and that is that there was no blocking. So for those of you wondering why the Raiders were willing to trade him away, they were using him as a running back, and he just was not in a very top 2 or 3 in any specific category they wanted, which is not his real talent. His talent is being kind of a Swiss Army knife, being able to do all these different things, line up very similar to Malcolm Perry.
Brian, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly. The reason why the Raiders let him go is they thought he was a running back. So quick note on this kid. His last year at Kentucky, he mainly played quarterback. It was mainly a running quarterback. He ran for over 1,000 yards. But the year prior, he mainly played wide receiver. And I believe he caught almost 70 passes. I'll pull up his stats here in a minute, but he was mainly a wide receiver, and he excelled at that. And that's where he was projected to go in the NFL. The Raiders got cute with it. They projected him as a running back. He was struggling mightily on pass blocking, as any rookie running back does when they come into the NFL. Zeke Elliott was one of the few recently that did not have a struggle with that, but that is usually the determining factor of how these rookie running backs get on the field, is when they are able to pass block and when they are able to see the schemes and read the defenses. It's not easy. So when Miami traded for him, they're taking that off his plate. They traded for a wide receiver and a return guy. Obviously, there's going to be some gadget plays. I can't wait until we see what happens when Bowden Jr. subs for Fitzpatrick and at quarterback. Malcolm Perry comes in at running back, and Jakeem Grant is in the slot in motion in what could be the craziest wildcat. Like, I don't even know how a defense would prepare for that. I can't wait to see what they do. It is a little – Malcolm Perry, he doesn't have the elite speed this kid has, but they're very similar. The main difference, though, between Bowden and Perry is Bowden had a year in college at a SEC level school playing wide receiver. So he's much more polished as a wide receiver coming in. So, don't expect week one him getting 60 snaps. He's got a lot of offense to learn. He's a rookie. But I'm excited about it. I mean, it's a steal. We didn't have that 4th round pick, and we got it from Raekwon McMillan, and we still get a 6th round pick back. So worst case scenario, we only gave up 2 rounds of a draft pick. He should just be a dynamic guy. We'll see what he brings to the Dolphins. I'm excited.
Has the 80th pick, he becomes basically the 8th player the Dolphins have basically acquired through that last year's draft, last April's draft. 8 players in the top 80. That is remarkable for any team. And to play off your point, Brian, if you have a Kentucky Wildcat running the Wildcat for Miami with all that speed, jet sweeps, all those Wildcat kind of runs, if you're going to give the ball on a handoff maybe to Malcolm Perry, he could throw the ball before he crosses the line of scrimmage. Same thing if Perry is the quarterback and Bowden Jr. Chan Gailey is going to have – I don't think the man's going to sleep in the next 4 months. I wouldn't if I was offensive coordinator. I'd just be making plays all day. But it's going to be a very exciting time to utilize, as you said, kind of a gadget player. He's not maybe going to be relied upon to pass block, So how the Raiders did not see him, the Dolphins will use him to their advantage. And moving on past Bowden, somebody that has also been loved in the Dolphin community or hated, depends on who you are and what camps you are in. He's in another camp. Right before we taped this show, Josh Rosen had become a practice squad player for the Bucs. So he is a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. The Miami Dolphins cut him as part of the trim and the roster shaping. Not really a complete and utter shock that he's not a Dolphin. The shock is, Brian, that there was no team barking at the Dolphins' door for a trade. No compensation return. This was a loss. This was a lost trade. It is what it is. What are your thoughts overall? And then we're going to wrap up the Rosen thing because we're going to do something that every Dolphin fan does. Let's move on.
Yeah. At the time of the Rosen trade, I liked it. I didn't see how you didn't take that chance. We really, if he would have came in for that 2nd round and the 5th round pick last year and been lights out in camp and we didn't have to spend our 5th overall pick on a quarterback, it would have been great. Definitely didn't work out that way. Josh Rosen is definitely – I'm not giving up on Josh Rosen. I think when this kid is 25, 26 years old, I think he develops into something. He's just raw. He's had really unfortunate situations. From stemming back from college to the pros, he's just changed offensive coordinator every season. He's changed teams. The other thing about Josh Rosen is even when he was drafted by the Cardinals at 10th overall, and then when he was traded to Miami, no team has been willing to like build an offense around him. Usually you draft a quarterback in the first round, a la Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. These teams build their entire team around what he does well. Nobody's been willing to do that with Rosen. So although I was happy about it at the time, you got to look at it now and say it's an utter failure to give up a second and a fifth round pick on this roster. You know, those two picks would have been huge last year. You know, but it is what it is. He's gone. We really suffered, and he isn't the only one. We really suffered gravely from having the shortened training camp and not having preseason games. He could not raise his stock this postseason because of the COVID situation, you know. And it's not just him. Usually you look at all the undrafted free agents that make a team, it's 0 this year, you know. Usually it's 5 to 6. Last year, I think we had like 11 undrafted free agents. So, you know, these guys that were really trying to prove something this year didn't have that opportunity. And I am shocked. I'm shocked that we couldn't get a 5th or a 6th round pick from him. I'm shocked that he had to go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers practice squad and couldn't even join someone's 53. But, you know, the tape he's put out there in Miami and Arizona, it just, you know, there's no trade market for him. So it is what it is. He's gone. We have Tua. We're moving on.
Drew, put a better bow than Brian did on that, and let's wrap up the Rosen talk forever.
Okay, so first let's go back and look at the trade because everybody's screaming this was a horrible trade all along. Let's remember that they traded down in round before they traded that second round pick.
Right.
Because the Cardinals said it had to be a second round. They said, okay, we'll trade down. You get your second round, and we'll get a second round pick and from somebody else. Well, you look at – so that's the first thing is they didn't lose the second round pick. They pushed it a year further. So that's not really the loss. So then you look at, well, what did the Cardinals do with that pick? They picked a wide receiver that caught for 189 yards last season. So Miami isn't the only ones blowing picks. So I came up with a little short list of things worse than the Rosen trade. So we've got the Cardinals picking Rosen in the first round, number 1. Number 2, another second we lost, the Jonathan Martin Bullygate whole deal when he found out he was getting benched. Now, it's a third rounder, but Mason Rudolph's only claim to fame is intercepting a helmet with his face. We had 3 second-round picks in a row, John Beck, Chad Henne, Pat White at QB, and none of them stuck. Steelers traded third-round picks 2 years in a row for wide receivers from the Steelers that combined for less than 300 yards and no TDs. So let's put a pin in it. It's over. It's done with. And we're moving on. And it isn't the worst trade in history. Relax, people. It'll be okay.
Well, Drew, I asked you to put a bow on it, but you put a pin in my heart with some of that trip down memory lane. Woo! But it's okay. We'll focus on the offensive players at the moment who made this team part of the 53-man roster. And, obviously running it down, everyone knows the quarterback room. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Tua Tagovailoa right now. Now, is there going to be a Jake Rudick signing on the practice squad? Let's see how that happens. I have a philosophy that we'll talk about in a second. Running back room, Matt Breida, Chandler Cox is the fullback, Myles Gaskin, Jordan Howard, Patrick Laird, and Malcolm Perry. He is listed as a running back as per the Miami Dolphins site. He was playing the slot all throughout training camp. His number tells us quarterback. I think they might be wanting to this is all speculation. Maybe there's an emergency third quarterback in him so they don't have to get another quarterback in there, leave Rudick on a practice squad if they can't bring him up, what have you. What are your thoughts on that? Just to piggyback on a little philosophy had earlier today. Brian, you thought any process of thinking that Malcolm Perry is an emergency quarterback while being used as other things throughout a game?
Yeah, I don't see him being used as maybe emergency if Tua and Fitz went down and we only dressed 2 players.
Right, that's exactly where I'm going.
But Bowden could step in and be the same guy.
There you go.
Yeah, it's very weird to me that he's still listed as a running back. He played wide receiver all through training camp. He started to excel there. I don't make too much of it as in putting it in the running back room. I don't think any of the other ones were surprises. Chandler Cox is probably on the bubble if we were going to keep a fullback. I'm pretty excited they did. They went with only 3 tight ends, and they kept Chandler Cox. He has been in the tight end meeting, so we get a little slash there. Chandler Cox at fullback and tight end. I'm excited he gets another year. Call me old school. I love seeing a fullback line up in front of our tailback and just let's churn that last 1 or 2 yards on 3rd and 1 or 4th and goal. So I'm glad he's stuck. I can't wait to see. You've mentioned Perry. I just can't wait to see what we do with Perry and Bowden. It's going to be weird and fun.
We'll segue to the wide receiver room. And Drew, I want your opinion on probably one of the more polarizing position groups heading into Dolphin training camp. Who's going to be the slot receiver? Who's going to be the 5th? There's going to be a 6th receiver. Well, we know a couple of answers. Lynn Bowden Jr. was brought in. He's being tagged as a receiver right now, so he's that last receiver. The slot receiver right now is maybe looking like Bowden, but you got Isaiah Ford, you got Jakeem Grant to match with Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, and here's, I guess, a surprise, but a nice surprise, Mac Hollins, kind of that jack of all trades. He could be a long snapper. He could pass. He could catch passes. He could do a lot of fun football-related activity other than just run routes. So what are your thoughts, Drew, on the overall wide receiver room? And just in general, where do you see Bowden fitting in there?
My thoughts are it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this team this year. Just like they don't have a position, they're aiming for a positionless defense per se. I think you're going to look at kind of the same thing on the offense, positionless. So they're just slots, running backs, wide receiver. It's not going to really matter. They're just lining guys up, and they're going to let them go. And I think you've got a lot of talent on this roster, and you've got a lot of speed to take the top off. So when you start adding those two together, that's when it's going to get fun. When you to what Brian was saying, when you got Malcolm Perry back there with Bowden, and then you put Jakeem Grant and then Breida the Cheetah, and all of them are lined up, and you got to figure out what you're going to do. And then you still got Preston Williams and Devontae Parker that you could just virtually have anybody throw the ball up to if they're somewhat exact. And Malcolm Perry and Bowden can both do that. So when you're a defense, what do you do?
It's like the movie Speed. It's like pop quiz, hot shot. What do you do? It's like there's so many things that the Dolphins can do. Someone's going to be a major beneficiary. And Drew, you made a great point where defensively it's positionless football, and there's going to be guys that maybe, you know what, their job is to set the edge. Will they get 15 sacks? No. Will they get 6, 5, 4 sacks? Maybe. But they might lead to someone else getting a dozen that we might not have thought would get that amount of sacks. Putting other people in position to succeed with maybe mundane tasks like running a go route. If you're Jakeem Grant, taking the top off of the defense, and then Mike Gesicki runs right over the middle for a nice gain. So I think that tight end position, Mike Gesicki is a receiving threat, and then you mix in Adam Shaheen, Durham Smythe to get that kind of heavy package, 12 personnel maybe, or as Brian alluded to, throw those 2 tight ends, throw Chandler Cox, let Jordan Howard just pick up and move forward for a yard or 2. Hopefully that goal line presence. So let's talk about the offensive line in addition to the tight end groups, because obviously Shaheen, Smythe could be extensions of the offensive line. Brian, before we name the players, what are your thoughts on how the training camp battles with the offensive line materialize, and is there a shred of hope that they're going to improve from the dead last team that they were as a unit last year in yards per carry, sacks allowed, QB hits? It was bad. What are your thoughts now?
Yeah, the first thing I think you have to say is nobody knows, right? These guys are unchallenged. They played – about 8 people saw them who are reporters who got to be a part of camp. None of those people are scouts. The other side of that is they played each other every day. They got used to going up against each other. We haven't seen these guys in live action. 3 rookies on this team we've never seen play NFL caliber talent. I think they're vastly improved from what we came at last year. If nothing else, at least they've had all of training camp together. Last year at this time, we traded Laramie Tunsil. We cut the other half of the line, and I think all the offensive linemen met at the Hard Rock Stadium about an hour before the Ravens game. So they're going to be better, but patience is going to be the key with this group. You know, it was put in perspective by Flo this week. His second to last practice of training camp was, I believe, Wednesday, and it was his 14th practice of training camp. He made the statement that normally we have 13 OTAs. So on any normal given all season, this would be training camp practice 1. You know, those OTAs are so important to this young group. So we're gonna see something. It's gonna be, you know, maybe at the beginning it's mildly better than last year, but I look for this group to vastly improve as the season goes on. And if, you know, you have a Robert Hunt or Solomon Kinley or Austin Jackson giving up dumb sacks the first couple of weeks, it's not the end of the world. They did not have a preseason. It's going to take a little time to gel. It's the reason we have a 17-year vet at quarterback to make up for those mistakes. So, you know, withhold judgment until like week 6 or 7. Let these guys get their sea legs, and let's see what happens. But overall, I'm pretty excited about the group. You know, one last statement on the whole offense as a whole, and we can probably even say this about the defense. If you look at a lot of the players, it's a lot of, you know, outside of the high draft picks, it's a lot of guys rounding out the roster who have been in the NFL before, and I don't think that's on accident. Like Matt Collins was the last wide receiver. This is his 3rd year. You know, he's played 2 full seasons in the NFL. You know, the practice squad grew. You didn't see any undrafted free agents make the team, and it's because you need these guys that know what they're up against. And I mean, Coach Flo said it this week. He's like, I don't know what I got. I haven't seen him live compete in the NFL versus anyone else. So I expect that bottom of the roster, you know, like, I don't know if I'm sleeping well every night being Matt Collins, being that 6th wide receiver in the room. You know, I don't know if I'm Isaiah Ford, who's probably going to start at slot, if how locked into that I am for the full season. These younger guys are going to be pushing. It's going to be a weird season because of the lack of the preseason. You're going to see a lot of roster churning for those last like 15 spots.
It's going to be a very interesting year, very odd year, offensive line-wise, before we switch on over to defense. Drew, you know, got a combination of veterans. And when I say veterans, not old veterans, young guys still, 3rd, 4 years, the 4th year in the league, and Jesse Davis, Julian Davenport, and then a 2nd-year player in Michael Dieter, mixing with veteran free agents Eric Flowers, Robert Hunt, and as you know, Brian mentioned, Jackson, Kinley, rookie Hunt, and then Adam Pankey, another 3-year veteran in the league too. So if you had to name 5, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Who are we seeing lined up, left tackle to right tackle, and everything in between, week 1?
Okay, so keeping in mind that this will not be the answer, but I'm going to say anyways. I'm definitely going to think Jesse Davis, Michael Dieter, both are on the front line, the O-line, just because they've worked together and they're trying to find the best 5. Overall, one thing that is nice to see is that the overall line literally cannot be 5 guys from last year. So hopefully that's a good thing. Austin Jackson sounds like he did well. So I'm going to go Austin Jackson, Jesse Davis, Michael Dieter, Adam Pankey, and Robert Hunt or Solomon Kinley playing one of the other guard positions. Oh, no, crap. You put me on the spot. Eric Flowers definitely starts. No doubt about that. Eric Flowers starts. Jesse Davis starts. Pretty sure Michael Dieter starts. Jackson, what's that? So Jackson, Flowers, Davis, Dieter, Kindly,
or Kinley.
Yep.
You know what? I like what you're building there. It's going to be anyone's guess, but I do think that the best guess is to maybe err on the side of experience in the league. Maybe, as Brian said, get their sea legs. It might take a week or 2 to really get NFL speed under the lights, you know, so to speak. Obviously, it's a 1 o'clock game, but the time is basically 7 days from now. You're going to really need to see experience rather than rookies play, but those rookies will develop. So hopefully a 5-person line It's going to go up from last year. There's no other way to slice it. So let's go on
Jason,
to
hold on. Let's all weigh in on that starting five. We'll come back to it. Jason, who do you have as your starting five?
All right, I'm going to stick to the veteranship there. I'm going to say that the right tackle will be Jesse Davis. I think that the right guard will be Kinley. He's looking good. And then you're going to have Dieter, Jesse Davis, and then you'll have Jesse Davis. Oh, wow, I guess you're putting me on the spot. I should never have asked that question. This is a hard question. So, yeah, it'll be Jesse Davis, Austin Jackson, Michael Dieter, Kinley, and Flowers.
You both have Dieter in there. I don't know what you guys are thinking. I'm going left tackle, Austin Jackson. Left guard, Eric Flowers. Our center will be Ted Karras. Our right guard looks like it's probably going to be Solomon Kinley. And starting at right tackle is Jesse Davis. That right side of the line I see changing. As soon as Robert Hunt is ready to play, they will fit him in maybe at right tackle, maybe at right guard. The vision when they drafted him is that's going to be Tua's blindside blocker for the next 10 to 12 years. Very short camp. So Jesse Davis, I think, is pretty much locked into the start at right tackle. But, yeah, that's how I see it shaping out on week one at least. It could be a dynamic group. I think Michael Dieter is more next year's center if they don't re-sign Ted Karras off to the 1-year deal.
I'll give you that.
Julian Davenport was my big shock that he stuck. He has not looked good. I didn't hear a lot of great things about him in training camp, but he definitely didn't look good last year. He had a lot of offsides. He had a lot of penalties, but he's still a really young guy with the frame of a left tackle. So, maybe they found something that would be great to have that swing tackle to fill in because, these guys – not just COVID. We have to worry about these guys haven't gotten hit yet. So the injury risk is going to be much higher than normal that first month of the season. Agreed
there. Now, speaking of hitting, let's go on the defensive side. Defensive line ended up to be a good 7. Raekwon Davis, Davin Godchaux, Shaq Lawson, Emmanuel Agba, Zach Seiler, Jason Strobridge, Christian Wilkins. I have a lot of excitement for Raekwon Davis, much does everyone else in Fin Nation. Brian, what's your thoughts on the line?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, probably the most improved group in maybe the secondary, but I don't know, that D-line really stepped it up. Raekwon Davis has been one of the stars of camp, according to what we've heard. I don't know how real any of that information is because they haven't played anyone but each other, but he looked good in camp, so that's good. We know what we got in Godchaux. We know Wilkins was good last year as a rookie. You can only expect he's going to be even better. I'm psyched about Zach Seiler. He flashed at the end of last year. He was in part of a deep Ravens group that we poached off their practice squad, but he apparently looked good in camp. So to have him as a rotational guy, and then, how can you not be excited about Shaq Lawson and Emmanuel Agba, true DNs, not Charles Harris and Taco Charlton as last year. There's been a lot of rave out of Agba and Lawson, and I can't wait to see. And there's been a lot of good talk about the rookie Strobridge. So I think it'll be an exciting group. And who knows how they'll line up? It will be a good group. The versatile, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, I gave you the D-line. I was well set. I'm going to give Drew the linebacker first shot here. We got Jerome Baker, Sam McGuavin, Camu Gray-Hill, Landon Roberts, Andrew Van Ginkel, Kyle Van Noy. I was surprised to see Calvin Munson, but a nice, happy surprise on there too. You want to reward young guys who've been in the league a couple of years who, can get their shot now. So what are your thoughts, Drew? Any surprises, and how do you like this unit as a whole?
First off, to kind of reference something Brian said, Calvin Munson probably is not sleeping very well at night right now.
Right. Right.
But one of the big things you got to look at is this group is it is intertwined because you got Kyle Van Noy, who can also play defensive end, and they're going to swap back and forth. There is no one defense this team runs. It changes. It keeps the quarterback guessing, and that's really the beauty behind the defense is they don't care how many sacks they get. They just want to keep hitting the QB, so the QB doesn't know quite where the hit's coming from. It takes something like 2.7 seconds to get a sack. It takes 1.7 seconds for the average throw in the NFL. So their main goal is to get the QB second guessing, not knowing whether somebody's lining up in coverage. This part of the reason they went with this group is because they can do a lot of everything. Jerome Baker does not stop the run as well as McMillan used to, but he has improved at it greatly, whereas McMillan just could not drop out in coverage. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what this group does and how they mix things up.
Speaking of coverage, we're going to all talk about the primary defensive bright spot, and that's the secondary. And there's no question that you have Xavier Howard, Byron Jones as the top two corners amongst the league, two of the highest paid cornerbacks in the league. They're shutdown corners. People don't even like to throw anywhere near Byron Jones. And then you have an up-and-coming rookie like Noah Igbenogany, who is absolutely very much could be a lockdown cornerback stud in this league. And now you have Nick Needham, who is, let's call him the fourth cornerback. And if for my money, maybe the best fourth cornerback in the league for a team that's going to utilize 3 or 4 or 5 defensive backs rotationally in their nickel packages and in dime packages and when they need aggressive ball hawking defensive backfield members. Adding safety into that equation, you got Bobby McCain, Eric Rowe, Clayton Fedulum, who was a free agent signing, Brandon Jones, rookie from Texas, and Kayvon Frazier, and throwing in depth to the backfield, cornerback Jamal Perry. So, Drew, sticking with you, I want your first crack at the overall secondary group. What are your thoughts, surprises? What do you think?
I really don't think there were a whole lot of surprises. I mean, the guys at the top are the guys you'd expect to be at the top. Xavier Howard, Byron Jones. I think we all knew Nick Needham was going to be on the roster, even though some people on Twitter were trying to clickbait to say he was going to get traded. Noah Igbenogany.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Noah Igbenogany, Jamal Perry. I mean, they were either on the team last year, drafted high, or high-level free agents. Bobby McCain, one thing people have to remember about Bobby McCain is he was playing with a hurt shoulder most of last year. So when they're comparing, how he was hitting and stuff like that, you have to factor that in. This will be our first year seeing a healthy Bobby McCain playing safety. Eric Rowe was a horrible cornerback, but then they moved him to safety and he was doing great last year. I mean, Clayton Fedulum, they brought in. You've just got a really good, solid group. Brandon Jones, Kayvon Frazier was kind of one of those guys they pick up and they work on. But I'm really excited to see what this group has to come. The final roster is not the final roster, though, because there's going to be some churning as they get these guys on the practice squad and get a feeling for them. But like Brian said, it's a different year than normal.
Totally different year than normal. Brian, when you're looking at the cornerback group, are you happy with the depth? Is anything surprising to you?
Yeah, I'm really excited. Nothing surprising, especially in the secondary, both corner and safety. Kayvon Frazier might not be a name everybody knows, but he was poached off the Cowboys, I believe, because he's a special teams ace. Clayton Fedulum is also a special teams ace, but proved this offseason he could probably play some safety too. So I'm sure he'll get on the field some. I can't wait to see what they do with Brandon Jones. He's played a lot of nickel. He's played a lot of safety. Even when we start at the linebacker and move to safety, versatility is the key word here. Like, we're going to see a lot of Jerome Baker. We're going to see a lot of Kyle Van Noy. We're going to see a lot of Howard and Jones, McCain and Rowe. And then we're going to see a lot of all the other guys. And it's just going to be a crazy mix, Camus Gruger Hill is insanely fast. He has secondary speed. I can't wait to see what role they have for him. Elandon Roberts is a run stuffer. He's very versatile. He can play fullback. I'm really excited about the secondary. What I'm more excited about than anything is, if you've listened to us all offseason, Xavier Howard has been the talk of camp. When is he coming off the PUP list? When is he coming off COVID? Will he be ready? Well, he's practicing pretty steady. He still said he's not quite sure about week 1, but the timetable is no later than week 2. So, the idea of getting Howard and Jones on the field at the same time makes me drool. Last year, our secondary was awful with a horrible front seven to support him. So, Rowe looked, like Drew mentioned, Rowe looked bad last year at corner. but he had no one on the field with him to help him out. We saw in the Cowboys game, Xavier Howard looked really bad in the Dallas Cowboys game. And it wasn't because Xavier Howard's a bad quarterback. It's because Dak Prescott had 7 seconds to throw the ball. So with that upgraded D-line, with the upgraded linebacking core, it's even going to be better for these guys. But, overall, I think it's that back 5-6 guys, the nickel is the new normal. We're going to see a lot of Igbenogany. I'm really excited about him. He's been the talk of camp over and over again. This kid, I heard he's the youngest player in the NFL, and he just dominated his first training camp. So I can't wait to see, what we have from this guy. Very excited overall. I cannot wait for week 1 for Cam Newton throwing to a bunch of wide receivers. He barely knows their first name and possibly has to go against Bobby McCain, Eric Rose, Xavier Howard, and Byron Jones. I see a couple interceptions, and I see my $60 that I bet on the Dolphins well spent.
To wrap up the secondary talk, and pretty much to wrap up the 53-man roster show, Brian, you mentioned that Xavier Howard, we don't know if he's going to be on the field for week 1, and if he is, fantastic. If not, this is why you don't trade the depth of a quarterback room. You're not going to trade someone who, by the way, Nick Needham had gotten reps rotationally in and out with Xavier Howard guarding the ones. For anybody who might need to know that was just heard from secondary knowledge where people have seen that. So Needham's going to get playing time. Igbenogany's going to get playing time. Jones, Howard, that's the standard. But if you don't see Xavier Howard out there, I think the Dolphins are going to have a very good emergency crew in the secondary to go up to New England and still check a bunch of receivers that their quarterback and Cam Newton does not have a lot of familiarity with, mixed on that new defensive line, the linebackers. Drew, anything to add? Because obviously there's a lot of excitement. We know who the team is. Brian and I will, of course, be back a little bit later, either today or early tomorrow, about the practice squad designations. But any last-minute things to add on this 53-man roster?
One last thing I'd like to add is don't get so tied up in who the starter is at which position. They are going to rotate. They are going to keep players fresh. That is the way this system works. They are going to have players play in different positions. The whole point of the whole idea behind this defense is to get the QB and goes, to get Darnold, going boo. That's what the whole point of this is. So just keep that in mind. Don't get too tied up on it. And they're going to keep quality. And I think for once, I can honestly say we have real depth. Not depth we're trying to talk ourselves into as Dolphins fans.
Well said. And with that, I will swing it on over to my guy, Brian, who has got a little bit of the bills to pay.
Yeah, well, before I get into the Bills, I do want to mention a couple things. The one thing we did not mention is kickoff and punt returner, which is going to remain to be seen. We'll see if Grant's back there returning kicks, if it's going to be Bowden returning punts, if Igbenogany is going to come back and return some kicks. So that'll be interesting to see. And gun to my head, if Xavier Howard plays week 1, I think he's going to be there. I would bet money on that. And like Jason said, we're going to come back a little bit later, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow morning. We'll do a bonus podcast on just the practice squad. And to a lot of people, that doesn't sound very exciting. It is super important this year. The practice squad has gone from 10 to 16 players. 2 players on the practice squad get to travel with the team. And so it's really not a 53-man roster. It's really a 55-man roster.
Good call.
Right up until an hour before kickoff, they could grab those 2 players from the practice squad and suit them up. 48 players dress on Sunday, so 2 guys on the practice squad are eligible to dress. But, I mean, we just signed Antonio, the much maligned but very talented wide receiver. Antonio Callaway just joined our practice squad. So there's a lot of things to unwrap there. And, more than, not, like I said, not just because of COVID and how quickly players can get on the COVID list, but soft tissue injuries in a season where there is no preseason and half a training camp are going to be big. So this practice squad is going to be super important. So Jason and I will come back. We'll fill you in on everyone they got on that. But let's close it out with make sure that you are subscribed to the Fin Addicts podcast. We're in Google Podcasts. We're in Apple Podcasts. We're in Spotify anywhere on planet Earth that you can get a podcast, we are more than likely there. Also, please follow us on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Fin Addicts Network. Follow us on Twitter at Fin_Addicts. And especially now that the season is starting, we want your reactions. Call us after game day, excited or sad or whatever it is. It's 786-309-7558. We want your reactions, your questions, whatever you want to say. If you want to make fun of Jason's hat, whatever it is, just give us a call and give us some feedback. Get involved. We want to hear from you. And another great episode. Good Sunday with my friends here. I'm excited. This is it. Last Sunday without football, friends. Here we go.
I am excited. Now, I do have one more question for you fellas. This is not football related, so I'm going to hit you up at the last second. James Harden, 6.5 assists this week, over or under? Or tonight?
Under.
Under? You going under? Okay. Under it is.
I'll go over.
You're going to go over? Okay, I kind of like Brian's idea a little more. So I'm going to go over. I've got my Thrive Fantasy prop-ups kicking. So until we have football to prop, we got basketball to prop. So y'all check out Thrive Fantasy. Brian just signed up. If you use the promo code Fin Addicts, as you know, 20 extra bucks.
Yeah, guys, if you aren't on Thrive Fantasy, you're missing out. This is like the coolest new thing in fantasy sports. Thrive Fantasy, what it is they give you 20 prop bets every week. So I'm mainly going to focus on football because really, are there any other sports? But I've already joined a couple games for next week. There's a Thursday special. There's a Sunday special. What it is they give you 20 prop bets, and Drew kind of touched on it. It will be like, will Patrick Mahomes, one of them this week is, will Patrick Mahomes hit 3.5 touchdowns? You go over or under, and you pick 10 of these prop bets. There's a point value with each one, and the winner wins the pot. It's just like DFS, but instead of doing it on numbers like we are used to in fantasy, it's over-unders on passing yardages, on sacks, on touchdowns, rushing yards, wide receiver yards. If you sign in today, you use the code Fin Addicts, you get an extra $20. I did it yesterday. I now have $40 for the cost of $20. It's a lot of fun. We'll probably be giving you our hot takes on it every Thursday. So prop up, baby.
Prop up indeed. And you can't make this stuff up. I'm literally going to hang up with you guys and then record a prop betting podcast in literally 12 seconds. So hello again, everybody. Jason Sarney here with the Fin Addicts Network. Going overtime right now. It's a big day. I'm with my buddy Brian Byrne, of course, of the Fin Addict Network himself. How are you, Brian?
Dude, I'm doing great. I just finished 2 of my 3 fantasy drafts of this Labor Day weekend, and I went a little bit too early on Preston Williams. I grabbed him in the 7th round, but I will stand by it. Looking forward to the last weekend of no NFL and, more importantly, no Miami Dolphin football.
I cannot wait. I own more shares of Preston Williams than I think I've ever owned of a player in my life, which is a very good thing. 7th round to 11th round. That's where I've snagged him in the various drafts, and I'm not going to give you the number, Brian, how many drafts that I do, or else you might just think I'm crazier than you may already believe. But
I'm super excited because every draft I've done thus far, which is 4, my total number is 5, are all Dolphin fans. Majority Dolphin fans. My draft tomorrow night is not Dolphin fans. I think I'm the only Dolphin fan in the group. So I can go back to like the actual ADP of the Dolphins that I want. I got Williams in the 11th. I can get in the 12th.
Yeah.
Even Howard in the 7th or 8th. I'll be psyched.
Oh, it's great knowing this is the year. And for all the fantasy people out there, it's fun when you have a year like the Dolphins are going to have where the guys are creeping up and nationally there's still a little, I don't know. But I think this is going to be a fun year that we sneak up. And speaking of sneaking up, this is the Practice Squad show in this overtime edition. And Brian, you're going to tell everybody a little bit on just, the nuances of this differentiation of year with COVID and how important this is.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. We normally would not be, so we're recording this at 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday to fill everybody in on what happened with the practice squad. We would normally never do that. But this year is so different, and the practice squad is so different. And the practice squad is going to be so important this year that Jason and I just had to get out of bed. We had to record this. And here are the differences this season that has never happened before in the NFL with the practice squad. So because of COVID, we are increasing the practice squad from 10 to 16 players. 6 of those players have no limitations of accrued years in the NFL. So previously in the NFL, to be on the practice squad, you had to be a non-vested player, which means less than 4 years in the NFL to be eligible to be on a practice squad. This year, there's no limitation on age, years accrued. A lot of people may have noticed the Philadelphia Eagles, they signed Josh McCown to their practice squad today, the 41-year-old quarterback. So that's something different. The next thing that's really different, what happens in the practice squad is once they clear waivers, you add them to your practice squad because they're not on an NFL team and they don't want to be holding back players from making that big money. Anytime another team can poach players off of your practice squad. This year it's going to be a little different. We get to protect 4 players on a practice squad, which means no matter what, nobody can poach these players. They're going to be Dolphins as long as we do not waive them, which is really cool. Kind of keep that continuity because as players get COVID, and it's not just COVID this year, the concern is we didn't have preseason games. We had half a training camp. We didn't have OTAs. These guys are not going to be in the same shape that they normally are. So you will see, more than likely, we're going to see more soft tissue injuries at the first month of the year. So these guys that we're about to talk about tonight, they will appear. About half this squad will be on the team at some point. And the last thing that changes this year that's super important is normally we have a 53-man roster. And what that means is that 53-man roster goes to Sunday, and then about an hour and a half before kickoff, the team decides it used to be 47 players that would dress. 6 players would not dress. They were not eligible to play. Well, this year, we actually kind of have a 55-man roster because before in the past, if you wanted to bring a practice squad player onto the active roster before Sunday, it had to be declared by Friday. Now it doesn't matter. 2 players can travel with the team, go right up to that hour and a half window, and we could decide if 2 of those players from the practice squad, they're eligible to dress as part of the 48 without having to jump up to the normal roster. So much different than normal, super important. As we talked about, a lot of these guys are definitely, you're going to see them, get used to half these names. And the last thing that's really important about this practice squad, and Jason, I think you want to talk about this as well, is normally in a regular training camp, regular preseason, each team probably averages about 3 to 5 undrafted free agents that make the team. Well, with no preseason, no OTAs, and a shortened training camp, the majority of the teams did not have any undrafted free agents make the team. That doesn't mean that those guys aren't talented. It just means they did not have the time to shine and earn those spots. So after a few weeks on the training camps, every year there's undrafted. Look at last year, the running back of the San Francisco 49ers, which if they won that game would have been the MVP, Mostert, he's an undrafted free agent. There's a lot of guys that are undrafted free agents that can play. We couldn't polish those diamonds in this really short training camp. So you will see these guys come out. You will see these guys make a difference. What are your thoughts on that, Jason?
You make a great point. Obviously last year, first preseason game, Preston Williams, his first catch was what did he just do? No one was able to see that. Now with a defensive lineman pushing through a center and a guard combination, you couldn't get a cornerback to see how he checks a wide receiver. There was no ability to get tape on these guys. So why isn't Matt Collins on the team? It's 2 years with the tape on him. Why isn't Calvin Munstead on the team? There's tape on him, you know? So you are absolutely right. We're going to see these guys. We're going to try to keep this to a guess on who the most likely that we will be seeing. And I'll tell you who we can guarantee we won't be seeing in the first couple of months of the season, and it is what it is. Maybe the first month of the season, is Antonio Callaway, which is the newest signed member of the practice squad that was not a Dolphin yet. You know, he was suspended for 3 games, or will be suspended for 3 games because he was finishing up that 10-game suspension, 7 of which was served as a Brown, if I'm not mistaken, Brian. I know you pulled some stats. And, you know, very good potential, some off-field issue, fast guy, 4.4, 140. He's done returning. He's done punt return, kick return, and he's got 43 receptions, 586 yards, 5 TDs. If you have anything to talk about Callaway before we run down the list, I think it's a nice depth addition. You mentioned Parker Grant might have a little mix things up early in the year, so if they add to those injuries, he might be a guy in October that comes on. Thoughts on Callaway as a whole?
Yeah, and Antonio Callaway, there's a lot to say on Antonio Callaway. I've heard people out of the state of Florida, I listen to the Joe Rose show from, the Miami Dolphins network daily, and, they're really tuned into high school football down there. And Antonio Callaway is highly regarded as one of the best high school wide receivers that has ever played in the state of Florida. When he went to Florida, he's a 5-star recruit. Antonio Callaway's own problems are not on the football field. I believe when the first couple months after he was drafted, he had his car brought up to Cleveland. They found a weapon in there. They found some weed in there. Last year, he was suspended and then released. But his rookie season, he played in 16 games. He started 11. He had 43 receptions for 586 yards and 5 touchdowns. The guy runs a 4.440. He has the size. I mean, this guy is everything you want a wide receiver to be on the field. The question's always going to be with Antonio Callaway. I mean, he got in trouble when he was at the University of Florida. He had to leave there early. So can this guy keep it together? Can he finally get his head on right? Definitely worth the shot. Especially, this isn't a guaranteed contract. This is practice squad weekly money. Yeah. He's suspended for the first 3 weeks. We'll know where his head's at after that. If I'm not mistaken, too, part of his appeal was he could actually be a part of some of the team activities during his suspension. So I feel like he can come to the facility. He can start learning the playbook. But I would not be surprised around week 4, week 5, this guy might replace Matt Collins. Isaiah Ford better have, Antonio Callaway would be a beast in the slot. So Isaiah Ford better watch out. If he gets a playbook, he's definitely – this isn't a normal practice squad player. This is many people – he was drafted in the 4th round, 105th overall, but many people have said if this kid's head was on right, first-round talent. So we'll see what happens. I like the shot. 0 risk, whole bunch of reward.
Well said. 0 risk, whole bunch of reward, too, for a homegrown kid. He can be around a support system. And, of course, Brian Flores, the entire core of coaches there, they have turned. And if you want to talk about some other, character situations, they did bring back Kirk Merritt, who played with some injury. So they're bringing him back in the practice squad, obviously, because of talent. And they've obviously known enough of him mentally that they're going to give him that opportunity. Same thing with what they've met and spoken with and seen from Callaway. So to add to Merritt and Callaway, and can I take a minute? The Matt Cole minute. I'm very happy with Mr. Matt Cole making the practice squad. I just think he's versatile enough where he could be a guy who could do 4 or 5 different things. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The more exciting players that I think that are a little bit more name brand, Nick Coe out of Auburn. You have linebacker Kalen Johnson, big name Benito Jones, that a lot of fans very excited that he's been retained. Safety Brian Cole, who is a Viking. So that's a player that is a new name. We have Javaris Davis, yet another Auburn Tiger. The aforementioned
Vontae Davis's cousin, by the way.
Oh, that's a good point. Oh, no.
Played with Noah Igbenogany last year at Auburn, too.
We have a Vontae Davis reference, folks. No, don't quit on us. We're halfway through. Don't quit on us.
Do you think when Javaris Davis was signed to the practice squad, he requested to call his grandmother?
Oh, you stole it from me. You stole it from me. I'm like, if anybody's thinking of leaving us, just call your grandma. She'll talk you down. Stay with us because we got a big name too. We got Tyshawn Render, who could be a beast. So very happy that they retained him. I'm a little surprised that no one swooped in to get him. So say what you want, but nice addition there. CFL safety Nathan Holley. I know you were a fan of him. If you want to talk about Holley.
Just a special teams ace, if we got a couple guys that mainly made the roster at safety for special teams. If anything happens to either one of those guys, you could see Nathan coming in there and just being a special teams beast. He has some ability at safety, a little raw coming out of the CFL, but we'll see what happens.
I mean, we're Miami Dolphin fans. To say CFL, Cam Wake, and then, of course, Sam McGuavin from last year, another CFL gem. So everyone thinks CFL and thinks potential. That's the word, potential. And then moving on, it's nice to see a Jonathan Hubbard who, worked hard during the training camp period and is, for lack of a better term, Brad, it's an offensive tackle body. It's a big body. It's an extra body. And speaking of that, is a project player in, import, export player, however you want to call it. Devon Neto, playing some guard, definitely has the size, needs to just learn the game a bit more. Excellent addition. There's a project that's worth 2 years already in him, so they need to develop him. And then, of course, you have Jake Ruddock, and then tight end back with the Dolphins now on the practice squad, Chris Myrick. So what are your thoughts overall? I'm happy. You're right. We're going to see them. Who are we going to see first in your mind?
So the first thing I want to say is our list right now is incomplete. There's 14 players on this list. They can right. Still add 2 guys.
And let's cite Barry Jackson. Let's cite Barry Jackson, who did a great job all day, just updating. These are all names through Barry Jackson's source on his Twitter. So thank you, Barry. Knocked it out of the park today. Throughout every time you do things. Thanks, Barry.
Absolutely. The one guy that I'm missing from this list that I don't know if he's been signed elsewhere. I've been caught up in fantasy drafts and taking care of my 9-month-old daughter would be Danny Isadora. I would love to see him to come up as that guard depth in case anything happens inside.
I have not seen his name pop up, so I think he's still lurking. And there's 2 spots left, so that's a name I'd jump on board with you there, yeah.
I don't think Neto is anywhere near ready to play.
No.
Jonathan Hubbard's great swing tackle to bring in if anything happens to everybody. Clancy, S.I. Clancy, we're really excited that Kirk Merritt made the practice squad. He's not a fan. I am. We've been duking it out on Twitter, but I'm really excited about Kirk Merritt. The guy got 8 practices before he got a soft tissue injury. He's been playing on the sideline. The kid has athletic ability, just like what we talked about with Antonio Callaway, all the athletic ability in the world. His head's has not been on right, but hopefully he can get it. Hopefully he gets a chance. You can definitely see this guy, around week 8, week 9, something happens to anybody as wide receivers go down. He also has punt return and kick return ability. You got to love. Super fast, sub 4.4 guy. Love that. I love that we had 2 priority undrafted free agent signings right after the draft, Benito Jones and Tyshawn Render. I was so happy to see both those guys come back. Tyshawn Render, a lot of you might remember from Bill Belichick skipping the first day of the combine to go work him out. Benito Jones is just a monster in the middle. If they can give him, that first year you come from college, there's a lot physically you have to get ready for. You did not have 24 hours a day to work on your physique and get in football shape. You had to go to classes and stuff. So hopefully Benito Jones, can take to that. I could see him moving up. The question is definitely going to be who are going to be those 4 protected guys? Who's going to be the 4 untouchables? I would say Merritt, but since he's nursing an injury, I don't see anybody claiming him right now and moving him to an active roster spot. I definitely see Antonio Callaway absolutely being protected. I think Tyshawn Render is going to be protected. Probably Benito Jones. My other guess might be Jake Rudock. I like the Jake Rudock signing. I don't think Jake Rudock's ever going to be a great NFL quarterback, but if anything happened to Fitzpatrick or Tua and they couldn't go, this is a guy that's been with this coaching staff for 1 year and then a training camp. So he knows the system. He knows the wide receivers. He's a good head to have at practice. So you got to like that one. Chris Myrick, you got to like. If anything happens to Durham Smythe or Adam Shaheen, he comes in. He's a blocking tight end. The one thing I'll sum up about the practice squad is we mentioned there's no age limit on this for all the teams. You don't see a lot of that on this staff. This is mainly undrafted free agents, guys that were in camp. We didn't see the 28s and the 29-year-old guys and like Tampa Bay signed Josh Rosen, Philadelphia signed McCown. There's some older guys that are on practice squads right now. We didn't see a lot of that, but I like that because at least 2 of these guys on this list are going to be legit NFL players. The undrafted free agents that we signed, I'd like to see who develops and who makes it. My fingers are crossed for Kirk Merritt, Antonio Callaway. Jason and I were talking before with Albert Wilson and Alan Hearn's, status for next year, very uncertain. Jakeem Grant's status for next year is uncertain. So I'd like to see 1 or 2 of those guys really emerge. What are your thoughts, Jason?
I think if we're talking about the 4 that you want to retain, or if we're just throwing, educated darts out here, I like Nick Coe because he is a pass rusher. And he's someone who could just basically maybe learn from Agba, Lawson, and if there's injury, there's no other pass rushers. I mean, literally, there's 2 pass rushers on the line for the Dolphins, and that includes just everything. Nick Coe is the 3rd pass rusher on this roster, outside of a couple of linebackers who might be able to get to the passer. But in terms of a lineman, hand down in the dirt, you got to develop Coe. So I think he's an Auburn player. There's 3 Auburn rookies on this team: Javaris Davis, Noah Igbenogany, Nick Coe.
Yeah.
So I like that dynamic there. I'm going to continue to push my chips in the middle of the table for Matt Cole, specifically for the versatility. He could return, he could special team, he can catch, he could do a number of jobs. Will he be 54, 55 up in New England? Maybe. Not going to guarantee that just yet, but I like him as one of the 4. Certainly one of Merritt or Render. And then you got to think that it's going to be Rudock. You have to think that there's the 3rd quarterback there. But we'll figure that out later on. And that's my 4. But in terms of going into New England, we're going to have to see how the week goes. But, I'm not going to put a guess in there for New England. I'm just not going to do it because you need to get through the next couple of days and see what's happening on the COVID front. I mean, if everything's all status quo, I would pick my 2. If everything's status quo, if we want to play it like that, Brad, I'd pick Jonathan Hubbard because he's got a little, experience just playing the line position. You never know what's going to happen with young talent and veterans coming together and maybe gelling or not. You send them. And I'm going to stick with Cole.
Yeah, I think the Cole's a good pick just because we have, Jakeem Grant and Devontae Parker have been working out on the sideline. They haven't been practicing. good chance no matter who goes to New England, they're not going to suit up because, like we said, you go in with 55, only 48 dress. So even if Grant or Parker can't go, like more than likely, if we're looking at who's going to dress next week, Mac Hollins probably ain't going to dress next week. So if Parker or Grant can't go, it's probably going to be Hollins over Cole. But I can see them having that flexibility with those two. I think after the week of practice, looking at the injury report, we'll have a better idea of who on this list is going to travel to New England, get a chance to dress. More than likely, it's none of them, but you never know. Jason kind of hit it on the head too. These guys probably aren't Preston Williams is a 1 in a million chance to get an undrafted free agent who starts as your wide receiver 1 week 1. These guys aren't coming off the practice squad to become stars the first time they're on. They're going to make it on special teams. That's where it's going to be. It's going to be injury related, but there's definitely some guys here. I'll say it again: Render, Merritt, Callaway, Benito Jones. You mentioned Nick Coe. These guys have some talent. So maybe after 6 to 8 weeks of practice, these guys have really, like Omar was on a few weeks ago, and he talks about you can physically see it when that clicks for a rookie, and all of a sudden the game slows down. It makes more sense to them. They just didn't have that opportunity this past training camp. So hopefully around weeks 4 to 8, some of these guys will start clicking and we'll start pushing those guys. And we know what we know about Brian Flores is he loves competition. And if you come to practice, you compete, you bust your butt, you have a chance to play. So these guys being on the practice field, they have just as much chance as any. And, I'm definitely excited about it.
Excitement's the right word. And Flores is he's the kind of guy that drains every little bit of juice out of that orange, to make that freshly squeezed orange juice. Every ounce of talent he's going to get. And once he's got everything out of that person, if it's not enough, he's going to let him go. But that's what this practice squad is. And these are all guys that fit in his mold. And I do think that we are going to see a couple. But you're right, Brian. Preston Williams is not here.
No.
There is not another Preston Williams in this group. And if you love a Kirk Merritt, we can root for him. But I don't think we're going to be writing him next year as wide receiver 40. It's just not happening. So good crew. This is something to be excited about. Hey, listen, a couple of years ago, Isaiah Ford practice squad, everyone loves Isaiah Ford's season right now, Development. This is a good thing. I like it.
Even last year, you got to look at last year. Nick Needham and Isaiah Ford started on the practice squad middle of the season. Nick Needham is intercepting passes end of the year. I don't think, that Jet game. I don't know if we win that Jet game if it wasn't for Isaiah Ford. So,
yeah.
It's these guys can definitely, the guys on the practice squad and the guys that made the squad, there's a very, very small margin. So these guys could definitely step up, let them get that experience, and we'll see what happens.
Agreed. And if, anything else to add, Brian, overall, because I think we could wrap the show up with a solid squad and hope to go into week 1 in New England with a hopeful W.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that wraps up the practice squad. We'll keep you up to date. Follow us on Twitter at Fin_Addicts. Those last 2 spots we'll fill you in on it. We're going to throw this up on the podcast as soon as possible. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We'll put this together with our earlier podcast, and we'll throw it out in one video on YouTube tomorrow. And if you guys have any comments, especially you Simon, if you want to call in and bitch about Kirk Merritt, we have a hotline, 786-309-7558. Tell me I'm an idiot for believing in this guy, whatever. Or if you just want to weigh in, you want to have your thoughts on any of these guys, let's hear about it. And, next time we get on this mic, we're going to be talking about a matchup between the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots, going for 2 straight wins in Foxborough. I don't think it's happened since 2000. So with that, fins up, baby.
Fins up. Let's do it.